Hello again and welcome back to my channel. I'm going to be doing a quick article that I found I thought was interesting since everybody ponders, the lost years of Jesus. This one is entitled Vague Years in Life of Christ Revealed by Recent Discovery. And this one is from 1926. Christian culture greatly enriched by important manuscripts found in Little Tibet, which tells of travels made by Jesus in India and Central Asia. The entire world of Christian culture stands a chance, it is believed, to be enormously enriched. Those vague years of Christ's life from his 12th to his 29th years are said to be last accounted for. The Roach Art Expedition has just sent news of the existence of manuscripts in the Hemis Monastery, Little Tibet, which tell of Christ's travel and preachings in India, Tibet, and Central Asia during those years. These manuscripts are ancient documents compiled by the Lamas, Buddhist priests, and they give an account of how Christ left his home in Palestine, joined a caravan bound for India, studied the laws of Gautama Buddha there, and later preached among the lower castes before returning to Jerusalem, where he was put on trial. The manuscripts have not yet been fully translated, and historians and theologians are impatiently awaiting further details besides the verification of their existence. The story of their discovery reached this country through letters from Professor Nicholas Roerich and through the text of his new book, Himalaya, dispatched from the heart of Tibet. The manuscripts are written in Tibetan language and are, according to Roerich, at least 1,500 years old, possibly even contemporaneous with Christ. Similar manuscripts in the Pali tongue describing a visit of Christ to India are understood to be in a Lhasa monastery. These are the most vital accomplishments of the Roerich Art Expedition headed by Professor Roerich, which has been in the East since 1923. The expedition went to Asia under the auspices of Corona Mundi International Art Center of New York. One of its chief purposes was to obtain a panorama of paintings by Professor Roerich of the entire East, a country never yet fully depicted by a Western artist, for the Roerich Museum at 310 Riverside Drive, New York. Already, 150 paintings have been received. In addition, remarkable examples of Asiatic art have been collected. Through the efforts of Professor Roerich's son, George, an Orientalist of Harvard and the Sorbonne, researches have been made into the iconography and literatures, as he has mastered Tibetan, Chinese, Persian, Pali, and 25 other languages. The expedition has, furthermore, succeeded in gathering perhaps the most complete collection in the world of Tibetan sacred banner paintings. Plans are being made to exhibit these in Boston early next year. Quoting the Buddhist manuscripts, Professor Roerich writes, "Let us hearken to the way in which, in the mountains of Tibet, they speak of Christ, and in the documents which have the authenticity of 1,500 years, one may read, Issa, Christ, secretly left his parents with merchants of Jerusalem and turned toward India to become perfected in the divine word and for the study of the laws of the great Buddha." One manuscript says, Issa had reached his 29th year when he arrived in the land of Israel. Another paragraph concerns the trial of Issa in Jerusalem by the ruler of Jerusalem, also referred to as Pilate. This tells further of a spy approaching Issa and saying, "Teacher, should we fulfill the will of Christ or await the further deliverance?" Issa, recognizing the disguised servant, said, "I have not said unto you that you would be delivered, but I have said that the soul immersed in sin would be delivered from sin." It is pointed out that this coincides substance with the biblical quotation, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and render unto God the things that are God's." One part of one manuscript seems to be devoted to Issa's reverence for women. He speaks respectfully of women, a most unusual thing for those days. Another part tells of his wanderings through India, mentioning Jagannath, Rajaritha, and Benares, the Mecca of the devout, and the sacred waters of the Ganges as places where he had been. According to Professor Roerich, Issa preached to the Sudras and the Vaisyas, who were of the lowest castes. At the time of Christ, religion was not meant for the lowest castes of India, and members of these grades of society were not even permitted to see the sacred books. When Professor Roerich first entered Central Asia in 1923, he intended only to follow out his original and dominant purpose of painting a complete panorama of the East. He was chiefly concerned with reproducing in color unexplored Tibet, and next to that with collecting art treasures for the Corona Mundi. Fortunately, he was welcomed by the lamas, who are so thoroughly devoted to culture themselves that they were glad to do their best for one so obviously immersed in contributions to international art as Professor Roerich. Usually, foreigners are not even permitted to enter the sacred monasteries. In Darjeeling, Roerich was entertained at the king's place. In fact, he lived there during his stay in that region. It was in that city that he first heard of the existence of the Christ manuscripts. Friendly lamas told him of them. Immediately, he changed his route and headed for Leh Ladakh in Little Tibet, since he was told that the Hemis Monastery, in which they were hidden, was only 27 miles away from Leh. The caravan journeyed through this very difficult stretch of land toward their destination. They found the monastery just as designated, beneath a crest of mountain, one of the few monasteries overlooked by the Mongols when they invaded and sacked Tibet centuries ago. Here again, Professor Roerich was welcomed by the lamas. They gave him unprecedented freedom in their sacred institution. They opened up for him the secret storehouse where for 1,500 years they have treasured the Christ manuscripts and permitted the Roerichs to study and decipher them. They may even have given him some of the manuscripts for the museum here. That is yet unknown, but President Horch is inclined to be optimistic in that hope. The lamas pointed out to him landmarks near Leh and Hemis, where Christ preached to the masses. Later, Professor Roerich wrote that further landmarks were pointed out to him in northern India and Central Asia, the Buddhist country particularly. So I wonder, with a little research, if somebody could locate those manuscripts, or maybe these guys, publish something about it. I think it's really important information and worth researching more. And that's why I want to share all these newspapers, because they all have little tidbits of information for people researching all different kinds of subjects. And it does point out dates and names and places that, will give those little clues and hints as to where to look next. So I hope this does help somebody out there. And I appreciate you listening today. And I hope you have a great one. Thanks.